Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is Xena, Warrior Princess, Season 1, Episode 1, Sins of the Past. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens in the episode. So the episode begins with Xena on her way back home, and she decides to feed a kid who claims that his village was destroyed by her, and then she comes to like a little wooded area and she decides to bury her armor. And while she's in just her shift, there's a commotion that occurs and she sees Hector kidnapping a group of women, including Gabrielle. And Gabrielle is the one who decides to try to stand up to them. Of course, she is not at this point strong enough to do so. But Xena, who is kind of hiding in the bushes, comes out, fights them all off, and then, ends up in the town. And Gabrielle is very much enamored with the hero worship towards Xena, who had saved her, and she wants to go with her, and when she gets rejected, starts asking her questions about where she's going, which is when Xena tells her that she's going to Amphipolis, but that she should not think about following her. Xena then is told by the villagers that her reputation precedes her and they don't want her there, so she should leave as soon as possible, and she says that she is going to leave soon anyways. She ends up leaving and she comes across a Cyclops. No, before that, she visits Draco, the warlord, who is in charge of Hector and was about to kidnap Gabrielle and the other women from the village. She goes to him, they have a history, she left a scar on his face. He seems to have a crush on her. And she basically asks as a favor to her to spare this village. He asks what she's doing. She says she's going home. He warns her that that's a bad idea because he tried it once and it did not go well for him and guaranteed it won't go well for her either. She says that's, her situation to discover, leaves. On her way, she meets a Cyclops that she had previously blinded, ends up pantsing him and getting past him, and when she shows up at home, it turns out that Draco was somewhat right in that she is told that she is not welcome. Her mother says she's not her mother. She's apparently gone home a couple times before in order to raise more men for her army. So the villagers are like, I buried sons because of you. Like, we don't want you here. Get lost. And while she was on the way, she also found Hector following her on Draco's orders. Hector then informed her that Draco was going to attack her home village under her name, or rather, was going to attack her home village. She then warns the people, but the people are like, we know what you're doing because Hector and Draco were carrying Xena's banners, so basically trying to frame Xena for being the one to attack her own village. Anyways, Gabrielle did decide to follow Xena, and she comes across the Cyclops and manages to talk her way out of being caged by the Cyclops by claiming to be an enemy of Xena and going to kill Xena. When she arrives at the village, she manages to stop the villagers from attacking Xena and talks her way out of that. She also talks her way into a ride on a farmer's cart on her way there. So Gabrielle is established now as a character who lies very well and can talk her way into most things. Anyways, Draco's men attack. Xena challenges him to a one-on-one duel. They then fight it out. Xena wins with the assistance of the villagers. The villagers then offer to give her a reward. She says she doesn't want it and makes to leave the village after visiting her brother's dead grave, which I think actually happened a little bit sooner. I should have organized my thoughts better, or at least thought about what I was going to say better. Anyways, all of that to say is, last scene is She leaves the village after being accepted by her family and the villagers again as, someone who is allowed to visit again and that they're not going to be hostile towards next time. And she starts her journey leaving the village. Gabrielle comes out of the bushes, basically saying that she didn't know how to start a fire and that she was planning to follow her until something happened anyways. And since she's going to follow her anyways, Xena ultimately decides to give her a bedroll, tells her she can sleep over there, and then they're seen the next day walking together. And Gabrielle says that she'll follow her even into tough situations because that's what friends do. And Xena acknowledges that she can be her friend. That is the gist of what happened, maybe slightly out of order. And now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, it is time to rank this episode. We start on the mostly objective ranking list. It's mostly objective because bias and judgment can still apply, but it does use set scores in order to determine key storytelling elements in order to find the ultimate score. And then on the personal ranking side, that is based on my personal opinion of the episode and also the entertainment value that I got from the episode. It's basically what I thought about the episode and where I think it deserves to be on our lists. But that now brings us to our mostly objective rank values. And we start with our single episode supporting character introductions. Hector, who is one of Draco's men. And then the Cyclops' name was Conjunctivus, and he was previously blinded by Xena. First tries to attack her, ends up pantsed, then tries to capture Gabrielle, who manages to talk her way out of it by promising to bring him back body parts of Xena, who is their mutual enemy, and he will continue to starve. And then we have the multi-episode supporting character introductions, which are worth 2 points each. We have Draco, who of course is a fellow warlord, or would have been a fellow warlord back when Xena was one, but now she's turned over a new leaf. He hasn't. Hecuba, which is Gabrielle's mother. Herodotus, who is Gabrielle's father. And then Perdiccas, who is Gabrielle's fiance that she doesn't love, who loves her. But for all that he seems gentle, at least according to Xena, which she says is rare in a man, Gabrielle says it's not the gentleness she has a problem with, it's the rather dim personality and unintelligence of him, and that she just doesn't love him. And then we have, worth 3 points each, our multi-season supporting characters, and we have Cyrene, who is Xena's mother, and then Lila, who is Gabrielle's sister. And then we have the multi-season main character introductions, which of course is Xena, the warrior princess, and then Gabrielle, who is her faithful sidekick. And I think at the start, she definitely is a sidekick. As the series progresses, she grows into her own, and it's more similar to, Hercules and Aeolus, as she's like the best friend traveling companion who's also able to hold her own. But that's in the future, and at this point, she's basically hero worshipping and tagging along, and that is very sidekick behavior. So I will call her Xena's sidekick at this point. But Gabrielle does start her journey with Xena. And then that brings us to 24 points, but there were some negative messaging or behaviors. First off, we had the kidnapping. Gabrielle was almost kidnapped alongside the other girls of her village. Targeting the innocent, Draco decides to target Xena's village in order to basically teach her a lesson for refusing to join him and choosing to go home instead, and not listening to his warning about what happens when people like them go home. Then there's Gabrielle. It's somewhat amusing how she can talk her way out of things, and her way into things, but also she spends a lot of time in this episode lying and lying and lying in amusing ways, but lying is still a negative behavior, so took 2 points for that. And then we had framing, which of course is similar to targeting the innocent. Draco decides to frame Xena as the one attacking the village to heighten the distrust of the villagers towards her. Ultimately, that doesn't pan out because Gabrielle speaks up for her, saying, like, I followed Xena from my village. Draco attacked there too. Xena's not associated. It's not her. But either way, the point is he does try to frame her, and that also is a negative behavior. But that still leaves us with 16 points, making this a 10 out of 10 episode objectively. And that now brings us to our mostly objective ranking list. Sins of the Past is the only episode, so it is in first so far. And honestly, because when more than one episode has the same score, they're just ranked in episode order, Sins of the Past will be staying in first place. Now, in my personal ranking, things may change in the future, but Sins of the Past is also in first place as it is currently the only episode. But I also decided to give it a 10 out of 10. I was debating a 9 out of 10 just because there were some areas in the episode where I did feel a little bit of secondhand embarrassment. And that's a negative emotion, which I don't necessarily enjoy. But I think that this episode was done really well as, introducing Xena and Gabrielle, Xena's new journey. I think it gave her a really good starting point. And there was definitely action, there was fighting, and with Hercules, he's a demigod. So, you know, he's going around being the hero, fighting humans and magical creatures and the like. And there's a certain level of he has supernatural gifts giving him an advantage. But what I like about Xena is that she doesn't have supernatural gifts because she is fully human, but she uses like talent. And, we see her jumping from horse to horse in one scene when Hector was following her and she caught them. She like walks on a branch and then, you know, falls down onto the horse of the farthest person, knocks him out, then jumps to the next horse and the next one until finally Hector sees her empty horse and goes, "What do you think Xena's doing?" And she's like, "Well, I don't know, I'm right here." And ends up defeating him too after finding out Draco's plans. They do this whole scaffold fight and then fighting on the shoulders of the various villagers, her and Draco. There's, her doing a bunch of flips. She uses her chakram to pants the Cyclops, but she just seems like way more talented than Hercules in that she has to try harder or have more talent because she is fully human and not a demigod. And I think that's why growing up, Xena was my favorite, though I do really like Hercules too. You gotta give it to Xena with all of the acrobatics. And she just has presence. But I did think even like Gabrielle's introduction being saved by Xena, being the reason she wants to follow Xena, feeling like she doesn't belong in her village, which is something that Xena could relate to because Xena also left her village to go be a warlord or a warrior princess in her case. And then, Gabrielle's persistence in following her, even though she has no skills at all at the current point in time. Overall, like I said, I think as a starting point, establishing the characters, we meet both of their families. We meet Xena's mother, find out about her dead brother. We meet Gabrielle's sister, mother and father, and fiance that she is obviously not getting married to because she has left the village. And most of the characters in this establishing episode do recur in at least 1 to 2 other episodes, if not more. And so that then also kind of adds a little bit of realism to the world because, it's fleshing it out. And she did get her start in Hercules, so like the universe itself is pre-established. So this episode, its only real job, because the universe was already established in like an entire series of movies and then season 1 of Hercules, the job of this one was basically fleshing out the characters, and that is what it did. So I thought for what it needed to be, it did an excellent job, and that is why I decided on a 10 out of 10 ultimately for this episode. Which now brings us to the series ranking so far, and of course we have 10 out of 240 on both lists, the mostly objective and the personal, as they both started strong with a 10 out of 10. So with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Xena Warrior Princess Season 1, Episode 1, Sins of the Past. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.